Hi Internet, hi Facebook Live. I'm a few minutes late tonight getting started. You're not going to believe this, but I am actually old enough to have a teenage child. My oldest child turned 13 today, and we were having her birthday party outside, and my alarm went off. I'm like, it's 8 o'clock, I gotta go read. Everybody's leaving anyway, so it's fine. I do have one munchkin in here. He's cleaned up some stuff that got wrecked during the party. But Arthur is present and accounted for. He's going to listen to me read Chapter 3 of Ozma of Oz, Letters in the Sand. Oh, here we go. Walking a little way back from the water's edge toward the grove of trees, Dorothy came to a flat stretch of white sand that seemed to have queer signs marked upon its surface, just as one would write upon the sand with a stick. "What does it say?" she asked the yellow hen, who trotted along beside her in a rather dignified fashion.
"How should I know?" returned the hen. "I can't read."
"Oh, can't you?"
"Certainly not. Never been to school, you know."
"Well, I have," admitted Dorothy. "The letters are big and far apart, and it's hard to spell out the words." But she looked at each letter carefully and finally discovered that these words were written in the sand. "Beware the Wheelers."
"That's rather strange," declared the hen when Dorothy had read aloud the words. "What do you suppose the Wheelers are?"
"Well, folks that wheel, I guess. They must have wheelbarrows, or baby cabs, or hand carts," said Dorothy.
"Perhaps they're automobiles," suggested the yellow hen. "There's no need to beware of baby cabs and wheelbarrows. But automobiles are dangerous things. Several of my friends have been run over by them."
"It can't be automobiles," replied the girl, "for this is a new wild country without even trolley cars or telephones. People here haven't been discovered yet, I'm sure. That is, if there are any people. So I don't believe there's any automobiles, Billina."
"Perhaps not," admitted the yellow hen. "Where are you going now?"
"Over to those trees, see if I can find some fruit or nuts," answered Dorothy. She tramped across the sand, skirting the foot of one of the little rocky hills that stood nearby, and soon reached the edge of the forest. At first she was greatly disappointed, because the nearer trees were all punnets or cottonwood or eucalyptus, bore no fruit or nuts at all. But by and by, when she was almost in despair, the little girl came upon two trees that promised to furnish her with plenty of food. One was quite full of square paper boxes, which grew in clusters on all the limbs, and upon the biggest and ripest boxes the word lunch could be read, in neat raised letters. This tree seemed to bear all the year round, for there were lunch blossoms on some of the branches, and on others tiny little lunch boxes that were not yet quite green, and evidently not fit to eat until they'd grown bigger. The leaves of this tree were all paper napkins, and it presented a very pleasing appearance to the hungry little girl. But the tree next to the lunchbox tree was even more wonderful, for it bore quantities of tin dinner pails, which were so full and heavy that the stout branches bent underneath their weight. Some were small and dark brown in color. Those larger ones were of a dull tin color. But the really ripe ones were pails of bright tin that shone and glistened beautifully in the rays of sunshine that touched them. Dorothy was delighted, and even the yellow hen acknowledged that she was surprised. The little girl stood on tiptoe and picked one of the nicest and biggest lunch boxes, and then she sat down upon the ground and eagerly opened it. Inside she found, nicely wrapped in white papers, a ham sandwich, a piece of sponge cake, a pickle, a slice of new cheese, and an apple. Each thing had a separate stem, so had to be picked off the side of the box. But Dorothy found them all to be delicious, and she ate every bit of lunch in the box before she had finished. "Lunch isn't exactly breakfast," she said to Billina, who sat beside her curiously watching. "But when one is hungry, one can even eat supper in the morning and not complain."
"I hope your lunchbox was perfectly ripe," observed the yellow hen in an anxious tone. "So much sickness caused by eating green things."
"Oh, I'm quite sure it was ripe," declared Dorothy. "All that is except the pickle, and a pickle just has to be green, Billina. But everything else tasted perfectly splendid, and I'd rather have it than a church picnic. And now I think I'll pick a dinner pail to have when I get hungry again, and then we'll start out and explore the country, see where we are."
"Haven't you any idea what country this is?" inquired Billina.
"None at all, but listen, I'm quite sure it's a fancy country, or a fairy country. Such things as lunchbox and dinner pails wouldn't be grown upon trees. Besides, Billina, being a hen, you wouldn't be able to talk if it were any civilized country like Kansas, where no fairies live at all."
"Perhaps we're in the land of Oz," said the hen thoughtfully.
"No, "That can't be," answered the little girl, "because I've been to the Land of Oz, and it's all surrounded by a horrid desert no one can cross."
"How'd you get away from there again?" asked Billina.
"I had a pair of silver shoes carried me through the air, but I lost them," said Dorothy.
"Ah, indeed,"
remarked the Yellow Hen in a tone of disbelief. "Anyhow," resumed the girl, "there is no seashore near the Land of Oz, so this must surely be some other fairy country." While she was speaking, she selected a bright and pretty dinner pail that seemed to have a stout handle, picked it from its branch. Then, accompanied by the Yellow Hen, she walked out of the shadow of the trees toward the seashore. They were part way across the sands when Billina suddenly cried in a voice of terror,
"What's that?"
Dorothy turned quickly around and saw, coming out of the path that led from between the trees, the most peculiar person her eyes had ever beheld. I'm going to show you a picture of the peculiar person. Can you see the picture? That is definitely a weird-looking people. See the picture, Munchkin? Mm-hmm. It had the form of a man, except that it walked, or rather rolled, upon all fours, and its legs were the same length as its arms, giving them the appearance of the forelegs of a beast. Yet it was no beast that Dorothy had discovered, for this person was clothed most gorgeously in embroidered garments of many colors, and wore a straw hat perched jauntily upon the side of its head. But it differed from human beings in this respect, that instead of hands and feet, there grew at the end of each limb large round wheels, and by means of these wheels it rolled very swiftly over level ground. Afterward, Dorothy found that these odd wheels were of the same hard substance that our fingernails and toenails are composed of, and she also learned the creatures of this strange race were born in this queer fashion. And when our little girl first caught sight of the first individual of a race that was destined to cause her a lot of trouble, she had an idea that the brilliantly clothed personage was on roller skates, which were attached to his hands as well as to his feet.
"Run!"
screamed the Yellow Hen, fluttering away in great fright.
"It's a wheeler!"
"A wheeler?" exclaimed Dorothy. "What can that be?"
"Don't you remember the warning in the sand? Beware the wheelers! Run, I tell you, run!"
So Dorothy ran, and the wheeler gave a sharp, wild cry and came after her in full chase. Looking over her shoulder as she ran, the girl saw a great procession of wheelers emerging from the forest, dozens and dozens of them, all clad in splendid, tight-fitting garments, and rolling swiftly toward her and uttering their wild, strange cries. "They're sure to catch us," panted the girl, who was still carrying the heavy dinner pail she had picked. "I can't run much further, Billina."
"Climb up this hill, quick!"
said the hen, and Dorothy found she was very near to a heap of loose and jagged rocks they had passed on their way to the forest. The Yellow Hen was even now fluttering among the rocks, and Dorothy followed as best she could, half climbing, half tumbling up the rough and rugged steep. She was none too soon, for the foremost wheeler reached the hill a moment after her, but while the girl scrambled up the rocks, the creature stopped short with howls of rage and disappointment. Dorothy now heard the Yellow Hen laughing in her cackling, henny way.
"Don't hurry, my dear. They can't follow us among these rocks, so we're safe now."
Dorothy stopped at once and sat down upon a broad boulder, for she was all out of breath. The rest of the wheelers had now reached the foot of the hill, but it was evident that their wheels would not roll upon the rough and jagged rocks, and therefore they were helpless to follow Dorothy and the hen to where they'd taken refuge. But they all circled all around the little hill, so the child and Billina were fast prisoners and could not come down without being captured. Then the creatures shook their front wheels at Dorothy in a threatening manner, and it seemed they were able to speak as well as to make their dreadful outcries, for several of them shouted, "We'll get 'em in time, never fear, and when we do get you, we'll tear you to little bits." "Why are you so cruel to me?" asked Dorothy. "I'm a stranger in your country and done you no harm."
"No harm?"
cried one who seemed to be their leader.
"Did you not pick one of our lunch boxes and dinner pails? Have you not a stolen dinner pail in your hand still?"
"I only picked one of each," she answered. "I was hungry and didn't know the trees were yours."
"That is no excuse," retorted the leader,
who was clothed in a most gorgeous suit.
"It is the law here that whenever one picks a dinner pail without our permission, they must die immediately."
"Don't you believe them," said Billina.
"I'm sure the trees do not belong to these awful creatures. They are fit for any mischief, and it's my opinion they'd try to kill us just the same if you hadn't picked the dinner pail."
"I think so too," agreed Dorothy. "But what shall we do now?"
"Stay where we are," advised the Yellow Hen. "We're safe from the wheelers till we starve to death anyhow. Before that time, a good many things may come to happen."
And that is the end of Chapter 3 of Ozma of Oz. Chapter 4 is an exciting chapter. We get to meet one of my favorite characters in the whole series, Tick-Tock the Machine Man. We get to meet Tick-Tock tomorrow night at 8 o'clock on Facebook Live when I read Chapter 4 of Ozma of Oz. Good night, everybody. Munchkin, you want to say good night? Stand up and say good night.
Good night. But before you leave, there's 2 Oz movies. There's The Days of Oz. It's a Mickey Mouse movie. And Lost in Oz. It's on a big TV. You can find it. And you can also watch it on tablets.
He found the show Lost in Oz on Amazon Prime, and he's been obsessed. There's only 2 seasons, but he's watched them both like 4 times. He's very excited about Lost in Oz. So you can check it out if you want. It's pretty interesting. It doesn't really follow any of the books, so, it's not going to spoil anything for you. But have a good night, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.